Hello everybody, I'm Kev Furber. I've been asked to say a few words about the Peugeot 205 T16, which currently I'm the proud owner of, along with Andrew Medicott, joint owners of the car. Now I've been asked to say a few words, tell you a bit about the history, show you some spares, a little bit about me, what it's like owning the car, show you some of the historical documents that we have with it. It's a pleasure to do this. I've asked my 10-year-old son Zach, who's behind the camera, and we're going to have a little walk around and try and explain a few things. Maximum I've promised to keep this video to is 10 minutes, so let's see how we go, because I've got an awful lot of information to tell you. First of all, about me, I've been an international rally driver for quite a few years. Well, a long time ago now, but done Lombard RAC Rally 5 times. Just look left, Zach, which is that's my works Peugeot overalls. And come back, that are no longer fit in. And as we can see, this is my original works 205 1.3 Rally. For anybody that knows, this is the original number plate. It's the car, yeah, I'm very proud to own that. It's an ex-Simon Davison car, so Simon, if you're listening, still in beautiful condition, but it had my name on it once in 1990 when it won the class and probably first two-wheel drive and best driver on the rally outright, but in the top 20. It was a great result. Right, now what I'm going to do is show you the spares package that will come with the T16. A lot of people don't believe that these parts are actually owned by us, so I'm pleased to show them to you. Out to the storage container, past the dedicated trailer that's for the T16, into the very dark storage area. Now, I'll run you through one or two of the spares. I can't do everything, it would take too long, but as we can see on the floor there's a full set of brake discs and calipers. Looking back in this box, we've got literally hundreds of different very important bearings, seals, all sorts of things for the engine, transmission. Some of these parts are unbelievably rare. That would be a fastening coupling for the front suspension, bottom arm, top arm, but would be unbelievably difficult to manufacture, so it's fantastic that we've got spares of them. Keep walking this way, Zach. Crouch down a little bit. That's a gearbox that I could tell you about in full specification, but it's a special one-off box built in New Zealand, 6-speed sequential, although it has a habit of jumping out of gear, so it's not in perfect condition, but it's got a actual E1 H pattern box in the car at the moment, so it's not necessary, that just nice to have. These are original wheels. These are road wheels from a T16. These are competition wheels from period from John Woodner's actual car as used. Looking down, I did used to have quite a few of these, but they weren't very useful to me, although historically I understand this Speedline mag alloys, so they are expensive, but don't really fit on the car anymore with modern tyres. Look down on the floor, Zach. There we can see some bottom arm, top arms. We'll go back a little bit. Over there we've got the cylinder head, and under the cylinder head is another box full of, better be careful with that, internal components from the original engine, I believe. All of these parts are purchasable today. You can buy them brand new still, so they're really nice to have. They're great that they're authentic, genuine parts, but in reality you can buy them off the shelf in a Peugeot showroom near you. We've got body mouldings, light pod, we've got the original door, got a few of these in original bonnets, Olympus Rally, John Woodner's 1984-85 Olympus Rally. And nice to have, lovely piece of history that's with the car. Okay, Zach, now we'll go inside, carry on our mystery tour. We've jumped into the studio now where I keep some of the paperwork, the historical factors with the car. And one of my photos in the background, which very proud of, is me and Colin McRae receiving a trophy for the best car in show for Rally Car Show in the UK, and the top photos special for me because that's my mate Mark Higgins driving the car on the same event. Right, looking down at the paperwork, this is a very special book. You only ever get one of these service manuals if you own a T16. It's useful for road cars, so the road cars get one if you buy a road car. It's a service manual, but critically for historians, this is every nut and bolt that is needed for an E1 or road car Peugeot T16. All the torque settings, suspension geometry, brakes, and every bit of the service manual. Now, critically, when we look at items like this, you can actually eventually figure out that every single component on the Evolution 1 rally car is a standard Peugeot component or a Citroën component, sometimes from military vehicles, but there's nothing that was manufactured in a bespoke fashion. So just about everything is a part off the shelf, and just about everything is still available if you knew where to go and buy it from. Okay, that's the service book. I'll show you a little bit of this, which is my starting question was going to be, how do I know so much about Peugeot T16s? That's myself and a young fantastic driver at the time, Paul Franklin, my competitor, and Johnny Milner sat in the car, English rally champion. And we sat next to, 35 years ago, the sister car to my Peugeot T16. So this is the factory in Peugeot UK, and we're working for the factory there because we were works drivers at the time, and we were representing Peugeot at their various motor shows for the team boss, who is Des Odell. And that's why I know so much about this car, because I knew the car in period when John Woodner had it built. I can tell those stories. In fact, I'll carry on with this theme on this manual, original with the car. We've got some very treasured documents. This is John Woodner's original competition logbook. It's got signatures from scrutineers and the various rallies which he competed in the car from 84 to 88. I believe there's about 12 rallies that he competed in. There are some documentation for exportation when it left America to go to New Zealand. Some documents are a bit more personal, including export documents, but also letters of authenticity from John Woodner's widow. I won't show you too much of those, but there's a lot of documentation that goes back with the history of when it was purchased from the John Woodner estate and then taken to New Zealand. Peter Johnson had the car in New Zealand. He rebuilt it. There's a big story behind that, but that's the car, and that's exactly what it looked like when I bought it. With a bunch of photos from when it was imported into the New Zealand, looking a bit sorry for itself, and then PJ rebuilt it to look as beautiful as that. PJ competed in New Zealand in a couple of Targa rallies. The car's quite a famous car in New Zealand. This one's quite an important one. This is one of the only times it's been on a rolling road. The car is limited to 7,200 revs, although it can do about 8,500. And at 8,200, we have about 320 brake horsepower from the dyno sheet. So that's the dyno sheet for the engine. Okay, and we'll put that now on there, Zach. Lovely. Hopefully I'm something like in focus. I'll let Zach settle down. Just to go back to the engine, now just to recap a little bit about the engine because it's very relevant. With all Group B cars, there's an awful lot of hype about what power was achieved from the engines. 1,000 horsepower, quattro, could do anything. Now some of those figures are achievable that you might hear. However, they're not practical on rallies for lots of different reasons. So you might hear that because it was unlimited brake horsepower, the manufacturer is bragging that the Quattro could get 600, that the Peugeot E2s especially, could get 500-600 horsepower, even more. The reality is actually using them in competition so they're drivable and they don't break the drivetrain, then the true reality is they had over 300, but probably in competition terms, 300 to 400 horsepower is as much as the car's ever had in period. And not forgetting that the standard Peugeot 205 T16 has 180 horsepower. So the Evolution 1 to have 320 to 380 is almost doubling the horsepower. So that's quite an achievement back in period. And this car's proven to be reliable at 320 at 7,200 revs, and I'm happy with that. Albeit that we've set the rev limiter to cut in early, so we don't ever see maximum power, but we get total reliability and the peace of mind that if it does hit the rev limiter, it's very safe to do that. So that's a bit of technical information about the car. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as far as transmission's concerned, but Zach has now got some questions from behind the camera, questions that I've been asked to answer, so I'm happy to do that.
Can you still drive the T16?
Can I still drive the T16? Yeah, that's really interesting. The reality is that if it came out of the wooden estate in 1984 and was never touched or rebuilt in any fashion, then the answer would be no. It'd be unpractical to ever have displayed the car. But Peter Johnson, when he got it out of the estate, invested heavily in a rebuild, and by doing that, he made it able in the year 2000 to be used in competition. Now, he had some critical components to make the car reliable, and these components are really serious to understand if you ever want to use the car in competition or in an active display. Suspension, critically needed new suspension, so it has ProFlex, very expensive new suspension, and not the original Bilsteins, which are 35 years old, although we have a pair of those if you wanted them. Brakes, the brakes were awful really in period, probably up to what the tyres were capable of, but tyre technology's got better, suspension's better, we need better brakes on the car for it to be safe, especially on Targa rallies. So it has brand new brakes, which are Evolution Mitsubishi type big brakes that you've seen, and they're great because they're serviceable and all new components. It was totally rewired in period, it was totally rebuilt, brand new engine specification, which brought it right up to WRC standards at that time, including turbos, fuel injection control, so Pectel mappable fuel injection, which in period would have been a standard Bosch system that wasn't tunable, whereas now it is, so you can set rev limits, even anti-lag, which is fitted to the car. Yeah, you know, it's a fully controllable, mappable system to run on pump fuel for me, but when I first got the car, it was running high octane fuel, so we detuned the car to run comfortably on display fuel, because we've never actually competed with on the display in it. So a few of the components, if anybody's interested in buying the car and they want to know precisely about the technology and setup of the car, no problem at all. I mean, one of them to touch on is that the exhaust system was remanufactured so the car could be used in competition. So it looks similar to the original, but in reality it's a lot quieter, and therefore it passes noise regulations and can be displayed. We have the original exhaust system. If you put it on, you wouldn't be able to use the car in displays because it's just too loud. So clearly it's got the authentic sound, but a lot quieter. Major components that I would be concerned about if we were thinking of using the car in display, things like wheel studs, wiring, anything to do with safety. You know, the chassis was a full strip down. It doesn't have any rust or rot or anything like that, but if it did, it would have been replaced. The roll cages are not brilliant compared to what you would get in a current WRC car, but it's exactly the same as the works manufactured. It's full steel cage, so it's not alloy, and therefore does allow you to compete in modern display events. That's quite critical. Some Quattros have aluminium and they're very problematic, but this is a full steel cage. New seats, steering wheel, and seats and seat belts, so everything that you'd need to be safe in the car. Fuel systems as well, fuel lines, and yeah, and a brand new engine, so a rebuilt engine that was more reliable, new components, and yeah, that's as much as I can think. Gearbox wise, it came with a 6-speed specialist built gearbox that's no longer in the car because I put it back to an original H pattern box. That H pattern box is a 6-speed, it's an E1 competition gearbox. However, they were based on a synchro box and not a straight cut box.